Welcome to Current Density with Jayden. Today we are reaching for the sky, literally, from the iconic Empire State Building in New York to the sleek tower of Toronto and Vancouver. So we are diving into world's most breathtaking skyscrapers. I'm joined by my co-host, Jayden. How's it going, Jayden?
Hey, I'm doing great. I'm really excited for today's episode. We have a lot to talk about.
Awesome. Today, we've got a fascinating topic lined up, skyscrapers, from their evolution to the engineering marvels behind them. We'll break down everything you need to know. So how do these engineering marvels stand tall against gravity, wind, and time? What makes buildings like Steinway Tower in Manhattan so unique? And stay with us as we explore the stories, innovations, and challenges behind the world's tallest structures. So let's dive right in. Jayden, my first question is, what defines the skyscraper? At what height does the building qualify as one?
Well, we all know that skyscrapers are like very tall buildings, but from like a city standpoint, a skyscraper can be an architectural statement that really pierces the skylines and defines a city's identity, really. While there is no universally agreed upon height threshold, there is a council on tall buildings and urban habitat. They have a council for everything, I guess. So they generally classify a skyscraper as a building that is at least 150 meters or 492 feet tall. However, there's higher bar levels for super tall skyscrapers and even megatall skyscrapers. So for super tall, they must reach 300 meters or 984 feet, while megatall giant towers, they have to be at least 600 meters or 1,968 feet. So height is a really important aspect of a skyscraper, but other structural things, like its ability to support its own weight, withstand natural forces like wind, and efficiently, transport people up and down. Those are all other factors to consider in a skyscraper.
It's fascinating how skyscrapers are classified, not just by height, but also by structural and functional aspects. So speaking of evolution, how did this towering structure develop over time?
Yeah, so the modern skyscraper was born out of necessity, since urban land is limited and the only way to expand with a growing population is not horizontally, it's up, right? The very first steel-framed skyscraper, called the Home Insurance Building in Chicago in 1885, stood at a modest 10 stories, only 42 meters high. But that building revolutionized the architecture by using a steel skeleton instead of relying on thick masonry walls. So they really changed the type of material they were working with. Over time, after that, skyscrapers evolved with more advancements in materials, right? You have reinforced concretes, steel, and you also have new technologies like elevators and HVAC systems. The Art Deco Chrysler Building in 1930 and the Empire State Building in 1931, they were both in New York, right? They pushed the height game further, while modern glass and steel towers like, the Burj Khalifa, that's the tallest structure in the world, right? It's 828 meters. That's in Dubai, and they all represent today's, these are extreme engineering feats, right? The trend now leans sort of like towards sustainability, I guess, with designs that integrate the trends of renewable energy, green spaces, and smarter technology.
Jayden, I have a question about the term HVAC.
HVAC.
Yeah, HVAC. Can you tell me what it is for our listeners?
So HVAC stands for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. So it's like a overall systematic temperature control system.
Okay.
So like all the modern buildings now, of course, have it, but if you see older buildings, they do not have a built-in like heating system or air conditioning system.
Okay, thank you. So from a 10-story steel framed building to today's megatalls, so it is incredible how far engineering has come. But what actually determines how tall a skyscraper can be? let's break down the key factors behind the skyscraper's height. So, Jayden, what are the main factors that tribute to height of a skyscraper?
Yeah, so obviously, if you want to build a skyscraper, you have to consider all the legal stuff as well as the structural engineering part. So it's really a balancing act between all of those. First of all, structures like steel frames, reinforced concretes, and tuned mass dampers, they allow towers to withstand immense loads. Materials dictate like feasibility. You need lightweight and strong materials like carbon fiber that you really need to build really high, and it's going to be a lot of weight on your base, right? There's also legal things to consider, like city zoning laws, such as New York's air rights trading, that can also restrict and or encourage taller buildings in some areas. So even if you wanted to build this high, you might not be able to because of your airspace restrictions. Economic factors also can drive height, right? High land costs in cities like New York, Hong Kong, and Dubai, they sort of motivate developers to build upwards to maximize return on the land investment. And also a crucial part of skyscrapers is elevator technology, right? If you're living in like a 130-story building, you do not want the elevator to be slow or like break down easily.
Exactly.
You know Otis,
Yes.
It's one of like the most popular elevator brands
company
in the world. He had his first prototype, and he made like a really huge stunt where he was the founder, Otis, was actually elevated upwards in like a makeshift structure, and everyone could see him. And what Otis did was invent the first kind of like elevator braking safety mechanism. So before that, if the rope snapped or lost tension for some reason, the car would crash to the ground, right?
Yeah.
Otis solved that by having rails on either sides, and if the rope were to snap, they would shoot pins, and the pins would lock onto the rails, and the elevator would stop. And in that demonstration, he actually went inside the elevator car and then had someone actually snap the rope from above to prove that his invention was like working, right? His company like got really, really famous after his show. Yeah.
Actually, in this building, they have the Otis elevator.
Yeah. It's like internationally, you know,
Yeah. So, engineering, materials, and economics all play a role. But regulation can sometimes be the biggest hurdle. That's why projects like the Steinway Tower push the boundaries in unique ways. So Steinway Tower in New York is one of the thinnest skyscraper in the world.
Yeah.
So what engineering challenges come with the buildings such as tall and slender structure?
Yeah, so Steinway Tower actually holds the Guinness World Record for being the thinnest skyscraper in the world. So they measure it by something called the width-to-height ratio, or the slenderness ratio. So basically, you divide the height by the width of that building. Usually skyscrapers exceed the ratio 10 to 1, so height is 10 where width is 1, or some even exceed 12 to 1. But Steinway Tower in New York has a massive slenderness ratio of 24 to 1. It's only 17 meters wide, but it's 435 meters tall. So imagine how thin the building actually is, right? So obviously building that would be a great challenge for the engineers, and also I think it would be a challenge for the architects as well, because you're designing on such a thin and constricted space. The biggest challenge that comes with designing like these really slender structures is wind. At heights like above a couple hundred meters, wind forces get very, very strong. It's like a blade of grass, right? If you blow wind on it, it's going to sway, and you don't want your massive skyscrapers to like sway uncontrollably. So usually what they do is have dampening systems. In the case of Steinway Tower, they have a huge mass damper at the very top of the building. It's 1,000 tons, right? So it's very heavy. And that is placed at the top to actually counteract those wind movements. Another challenge is actually, the construction itself, right? You have to build a reinforced concrete core, and then you have to build everything on top of it. Such a slim profile for the building means limited floor space for heavy-duty cranes and materials. Additionally, Steinway residences, I believe there's only 80 floors and 60 residences, so there's not much. And each of those residences, obviously, they have a higher ceiling than most other apartments. And you need to take all of that in consideration when you're trying to, design and build the skyscraper, especially that it's a very luxury kind of themed apartment building. Yeah.
So balancing extreme height with the stability is no easy feat, especially in the city as dense as New York. But why? Why are developers so eager to build these luxury towers? Let's talk about Billionaires Row and why it has become a magnet for supertall residences. Why is this area attracting so many luxury skyscrapers?
Oh yeah, so if you don't know what Billionaires Row is, it is a specific street, 57th Street in New York, that houses some of the most iconic, super tall apartment buildings in the world. You have the Steinway Tower, of course, that's 111 West 57th Street, but other iconic buildings include 432 Park Avenue, and Central Park Tower, that's 225 West 57th, and that is actually the tallest apartment building in the world. Yeah, so the Burj Khalifa has residential units, but it's not primary it's not a primary residential building.
It's a complex, right?
Yeah,
Commercial residence
yeah,
complex.
it's a mix of commercial and residence. They only have 900 units in the Burj Khalifa, which sounds a lot, but it doesn't make up the majority of the building. So at Central Park Tower, you have 157, so that was the initial super tall building that set off this kind of trend. And with all of these super tall buildings, it really became the street in Manhattan that's like a playground for the ultra wealthy to do some real estate investing. I did hear that most of the apartments people actually don't live in. Yeah, because they just buy the house and then they just use it for investment purposes. Right?
Okay.
But if you do decide to live there, the area, first of all, offers extraordinary views of Central Park. It's right down the middle. And the way that they build these skyscrapers is really challenging. New York City has air zoning rights. So basically, if you want to build something really tall, you have to buy the air rights to do so. So you go to nearby buildings and properties, and then you have to negotiate and make a deal with them and say, hey, can I buy the space above your building?
Okay.
And then I have to stack all of those spaces acquired from the neighboring properties, and then you have to stack them to your own property. And doing that costs a lot of money. If negotiations can't be done, it might restrict your height. So developing these Billionaires Row super tall residential buildings is a very, very difficult task. So billionaires globally use these ultra luxury apartments as investment assets. They're mere financial tools for most of them. Developers capitalize on this by offering, sky-high penthouses. Sometimes I see advertisements for the 76th floor penthouse on Steinway Tower, or that top sunrise penthouse on Central Park Tower. Obviously, they cost anywhere between tens of millions to hundreds of millions of dollars. So definitely, they also have world-class amenities and extreme privacy. That high up, nobody's really going to disturb you. So those are the benefits and kind of things that billionaires look for in luxury apartments.
Yeah. So with breathtaking views and sky-high price tag, so these buildings redefine luxury living. But with great height comes great responsibility. So how do architects ensure that these massive structures remain stable in extreme conditions?
Oh yeah. So I briefly talked about it for Steinway Tower. They have a tuned mass damper, a huge block of concrete at the top. The Taipei 101, which is another iconic skyscraper, they have a 660-ton block in it. So they basically resist the swaying motion that can be caused by the wind. So that's why they put the tuned mass dampers in. Also, a really important factor with wind is how do you shape the skyscraper? So aerodynamic shaping, like how do you slightly taper the end or twist the building in some way, or they actually intentionally they leave some floors empty and they don't put any windows in it so the wind can flow naturally, the service floors. Those are all intentional designs so that the building sways as little as possible. And at the base, right, they use flexible joints and very, very deep, strong foundations that allow buildings to withstand their own massive weight. Some towers, like Tokyo's Mori Tower, are even built on giant shock absorbers to dissipate tremors. So Tokyo is obviously like a huge earthquake region, and if an earthquake does strike, you don't want all of those super tall buildings to be falling down, right? The Burj Khalifa uses a tripod, like a Y-shaped core, and that makes it incredibly stable, even at the massive height of like 828 meters.
It's amazing how skyscraper can withstand nature's most powerful forces using advanced engineering techniques. But stability isn't the only concern. Sustainability is becoming just as important. How are Canadian cities incorporating green building designs into their skyscrapers?
Yeah, so Canadian cities are embracing sustainability by integrating eco-friendly materials, energy efficiency, and biophilic design into their skyscrapers. So an example would be Toronto's The One. That's Canada's tallest skyscraper. They incorporate energy efficient systems, while Vancouver is a leader in green roof mandates and carbon neutral towers. The Bank of Montreal Tower in Toronto uses triple glazed windows, solar panels, and rainwater harvesting to reduce environmental impact. Yeah, Vancouver's Pacific Place, I think, Canada Place, they have like a huge green roof that they collect water, and actually they use that rainwater in their bathrooms, I think. Yeah. Vancouver's Brock Commons Tallwood House show that even 18-story buildings can be made from sustainable wood instead of concrete. So wood-based designs, they're obviously going to be a challenge in an engineering aspect, but still it can be achieved. And I think Canada would expect more net zero towers and living structures as, we generally push towards a more greener future.
From green roofs to energy efficient tower, Canada is taking a proactive approach to eco-friendly skyscrapers. But compared to New York, Canadian cities have very different strategy when it comes to urban density and high-rise development. So let's explore the difference. So how do they differ in their approach to urban density and skyscraper development?
Yeah, so if you ask any person internationally, I don't think they would recognize Canada as the home for super tall structures and skyscrapers, while they might recognize some of New York's tallest buildings. That's just because the difference between how zoning laws work between the two cities. So in the case of New York, obviously the air rights is a big deal, right? So there's a whole market of that. And the land values, obviously, it's a really dense and compact space, and they have extreme prices. So that drives its aggressive vertical expansion, and that leads to super tall, ultra skinny luxury towers. In contrast, Canadian cities like Toronto and Vancouver take a more like balanced, I think, approach, encouraging a blend of like high rises, mid rises, and public spaces to prioritize livability. Toronto is growing rapidly, but mandates green space integration, while Vancouver's strict view corridors prevent excessive like skyscraper clustering. Yeah, they have like specific laws on like you have to have this certain amount of like view before like a building can block you. Yeah.
Okay.
So Canadian cities also have affordable housing initiatives, whereas New York's developments they really favor high-end like ultra luxury real estate, and you know rather than like just treating it as a luxury apartment, it's also an equally valuable investment option for like the ultra wealthy, right? So they're keeping like both options viable.
So while New York pushes vertical limits, Canadian cities focus on balanced, sustainable growth. Okay, so speaking of sustainability, so let's dive deeper into how Canadian skyscrapers are leading the way with the green innovation. How are Canadian skyscrapers incorporating green building designs?
Yeah, so Canadian skyscrapers are, I think they're pioneering sustainability through features like solar panel facades, rainwater collection, and an overall net zero energy consumption. The CIBC Square in Toronto boasts intelligent climate control and green terraces, while the Telus Garden Tower in Vancouver, I think you could just see it out there outside our building. That reduces energy use with geothermal heating and rooftop gardens. Mass timber is emerging as a low-carbon alternative to steel and concrete. And with projects like Brock Commons Tallwood House, you know, that wood structure demonstrating its potential, we can expect more passive house-certified towers and, you know, bio-friendly elements like vertical gardens and natural ventilation systems.
So net zero energy, smart climate control, and even mass timber structures. Canada is setting the stage for the greener skyline. But what's next? Could we see even taller or more futuristic design in the near future?
So this future of skyscrapers is heading in, like, I think two parallel but interconnected directions, right? They obviously can get bigger, and as we, you know, confront global warming, they're going to get greener as well. In New York, developers will likely push for, you know, even more taller super talls, experimenting with carbon fiber. That's a really, you know, hot material in like all aspects of construction. AI-driven construction maybe will be the focus, and floating foundations to build like even higher than before. In Canada, they're not going to be likely to build like massive super tall structures like the United States like or like Dubai might do, but I think the focus will be more on sustainability and livability with smarter systems inside buildings, you know, vertical walls and forests, and zero carbon designs. You don't really have to, you know, focus on expanding. You could focus on like urban innovation, right? In the future, we might expect skyscrapers with more advanced solar panels, wind turbines even, and maybe, have you heard of algae buildings?
Algae buildings?
Yeah.
What is this?
So algae, they actually produce energy when like exposed to light, I think, photosynthesis. And they capture that energy to power the building's electricity, I believe.
From the photosynthesis?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so there's been some prototype buildings.
Oh, okay.
That has like these green pipes running all over the exterior. Yeah. So that might be another sustainable way to approach and apply them into skyscrapers as well.
Okay. So with the new technologies and bold ideas shaping the future, the next generation of skyscrapers could be taller, smarter, and greener than ever before. The sky's the limit. So that's the wrap for today's episode on the world's skyscrapers. So we've covered everything from record-breaking heights to cutting-edge sustainability. And it's amazing to see how these buildings shape our cities and our future. Right, Jayden?
So that's a wrap for today's episode on the world's skyscrapers. We've covered everything from record-breaking heights and slimness to cutting-edge sustainability. And it is really amazing to see how these buildings shape our cities and our future.
Okay. Right. Skyscrapers aren't just a building. They are a reflection of human ambition and innovation. So if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and share. Also, we would love to hear from you. So what's your favorite skyscraper or city skyline? Drop us the message.
Yeah, tell us which skyline you'd love to visit. I would personally like to visit Billionaires Row in person.
Oh, yeah?
And like look up at those like super tall buildings and see what they're actually like. Yeah. Thanks for listening, and we will catch you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.